Hello everyone and welcome to Network Playroom. In this video, we're going to talk about the new CCIE Enterprise Infrastructure Lab exam in more detail. We'll discuss what has changed in terms of exam topics and exam structure from the old CCIE Routing and Switching exam. There's actually not much material out there yet, so we'll just have to deal with what we have at the moment. And by the way, I'll refer to the new CCIE as CCIE Enterprise and leave out the infrastructure part, just because it's easier to say. Infrastructure is actually rather a difficult word for me, so we'll leave it out for the purposes of this video. Okay, so first, let's pull the exam blueprints for the CCIE Enterprise and the CCIE Routing and Switching exams. And you can find these documents in the Cisco Learning Network and the Cisco Certifications page. I'll leave links in the description so you can find these documents easily. But I have them open here in these new tabs. All right, but before we break these down in more detail, let's actually look at a general overview of the exams. So first, let's look at the main categories and their weight in the exam. So these documents are quite lengthy and the information is not difficult to find, but a little bit tedious. So I've made a text document which essentially summarizes the information like it is represented here for the CCIE Enterprise exam. So you can use these arrows to expand the view and you get the detailed topic list. But for now, we're interested in the general overview. So let me pull my document and let's look at that more closely. So let's start with the CCIE Routing and Switching lab exam. So these 5 are the main categories, and the percentage indicates what part of the exam that covers or what weight it has in the exam. So number 1 is Layer 2 Technologies, which covers 20% of the exam. Number 2 is Layer 3 Technologies, which covers 40% of the exam. Then number 3, we have VPN Technologies, which covers 20% of the exam. And finally, categories 4 and 5 are infrastructure related, the first one being security and the second part services. And the security covers 5%, while services covers 15% of the exam. Now, as you can see, the exam focuses heavily on routing or Layer 3 technologies, which makes up nearly half of the exam. And actually, the first 3 categories comprise a vast majority of the exam, with only 20% left for infrastructure, security, and services. So next, let's jump to the CCIE Enterprise exam, and let's get the same general overview of that exam. So again, 5 categories and the percentages in the exam. So the first category is network infrastructure, which covers 30% of the exam. Next, we have software-defined infrastructure, which covers 25% of the exam. And then the remaining 3 categories all cover 15% of the exam. And that includes transport technologies and solutions. Then we have infrastructure, security, and services. And finally, infrastructure, automation, and programmability. Now, as you can already tell, the categories and the focus of the exam has significantly changed. Now, roughly speaking, the Layer 2 and Layer 3 technologies from the CCIE Routing and Switching exam have been squeezed into the network infrastructure category in the CCIE Enterprise exam. So basically, these two categories are now put into this one. We'll look at that a little bit later when we compare the different topics briefly. I'm not going to break down each topic for both exams because those exam blueprints are massive. Anyway, back to where we were. So note that the weight of those topics has basically been cut in half from a total of 60% to 30%. Now next, the software-defined infrastructure is a completely new category. And this category includes topics like SD access and SD-WAN, which were not present in the CCIE Routing and Switching exam. So this category right here is completely new. It has been added to the CCIE Enterprise exam, and it wasn't previously present in the CCIE Routing and Switching exam. Then the Transport Technologies and Solutions category is basically equal to the VPN Technologies, including topics like MPLS and DMVPN, which are the two main topics in the CCIE Enterprise in that category. Now, the other topics from VPN Technologies, like some tunneling technologies, have been dropped. Now, infrastructure security and infrastructure services have been collectively put together in the CCIE Enterprise exam. Most, if not all, topics are carried over from the CCIE Routing and Switching exam to the CCIE Enterprise exam. So again, these two categories have been made into one in the new CCIE exam. And then finally, infrastructure automation and programmability is another completely new category in the CCIE Enterprise exam. And this category contains topics like JSON, XML, Python, and Postman. I'm not actually sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Is it JSON, JSON? I don't know. You let me know in the comments. Okay, so let's briefly look at these documents. Again, I mentioned that the VPN Technologies category is almost identical, with some topics having been dropped from the new exam. So if we compare this from the CCIE Routing and Switching exam to the new CCIE Enterprise exam, so you can see here there's two main categories, or two main topics, I should say, MPLS and DMVPN. So same here, although the information is not represented in the same way. It is described differently in this document, but here you have MPLS, as well as DMVPN should be here. Yeah. But there are some other topics that are not included in the CCIE Enterprise, like this IP version 4 site 2, IP version 4 site tunneling, and such. But again, you can look at these documents in more detail yourself if you're interested in comparing exactly what has been changed in the new exam. Okay, so next, let's look at the exam format. Now, in the CCIE Routing and Switching exam, there was 3 sections: troubleshooting, diagnostics, and configuration. And all those sections were independent of each other with a specific amount of time given to each section. Now, I didn't check all the details because we're not really interested in that exam, since it's not even available anymore, or won't be soon, depending on when you're watching this video. Before we discuss the exam format in more detail, there's something important I like to point out. So what we're about to discuss is completely my own interpretation based on the information that is currently available. So no one has actually seen the exam. It is not out there anywhere. I have not taken the exam. So everything I'm about to say here is completely based on this document, which is available on the Cisco Learning Network. But again, I have not seen the actual exam. So we'll just have to go with the information that is given to us here. Okay, so let's explore the CCIE Enterprise Lab exam. Now, on a high level, the exam consists of two modules, design and configuration. Technically, the second module is called deploy, operate, and optimize, but I'll refer to it as configuration for simplicity. Now, the exam is 8 hours, with the first module being 3 hours and the second module being 5 hours. So before we discuss those modules in more detail, let's look at the introduction here first. So first thing to note here is this sentence. Automation and network programmability skills as per exam topics are integral part of both modules. So they are stressing that automation and programmability are an important part of the entire exam. That basically means you better learn how to code, because it seems like they're putting a lot of emphasis on programming. This doesn't mean you have to become a coding expert or some kind of programming guru, but you should learn a decent level of programming skills. Okay, next, pay attention to the paragraph below it, right here. Candidates will be tested on varying technologies and solutions listed in the exam topics throughout both modules. While both modules are independent from each other, there is a progressive storyline that will be built upon throughout the entire 8 hours lab practical exam. Candidates will not be able to navigate back and forward between the modules. So I'm interpreting this as being much like the CCDE exam. And I also think it's really cool that you potentially design a network solution in the first module and then configure and optimize it in the second module, much how it would happen in real life. So here is a nice graph just giving a general overview of the exam. So as we discussed, the first module, the design module, is 3 hours. And then the second module, which I refer to as the configuration module, is 5 hours. All right. So now let's discuss the design module. Now, note this part here. The module is scenario-based without access to any devices. Candidates will be provided with a set of documentation required to discern before answering web-based items. Now, again, this seems very much like the CCDE exam. So, moving forward to the next paragraph, examples of documentation include email threads, high-level design, network topology diagrams, customer requirements and restrictions, etc. Examples of web-based items include drag and drop, multiple choice, single answer, multiple choice, multiple answer, drop-down items, etc. So this is basically like a normal written exam, like what you would take at a Pearson VUE testing center. That's what I gather from this information. And also pay attention to the last part here. During this module, backward navigation will be disabled. As such, candidates will not have full visibility on all questions within this module. Point values associated to each item are not displayed within this module. Again, just like a written exam that you have probably taken at some point in your life. That's really how it seems to me based on this information. Okay, so let's move on to the second module. So here you will actually configure and run a network. Okay, so let's read the specification for this module, the first paragraph. In this module, candidates will be deploying, operating, and optimizing network technologies and solutions. Deploy. Candidates will build the network according to the design specifications, customer requirements, and restrictions. All steps required for a successful implementation will be covered, including configuring, integrating, and troubleshooting the commissioning of technologies and solutions as per exam topics. And then operate and optimize. Candidates will operate and optimize network technologies and solutions. This includes monitoring network health, network performance, configure the network to improve service quality, reduce disruptions, mitigate outages, reduce operating costs, and maintain high availability, reliability, and security, as well as diagnose potential issues and adjust configuration to align to changing business goals and/or technical requirements. So the last part is interesting to me. Right here, diagnose potential issues and adjust configurations to align to changing business goals and/or technical requirements. I take this to mean that some form of troubleshooting is integrated in this module. Perhaps they purposely misconfigured something or applied a policy somewhere which is not optimal. So it's your job to identify the problem and fix it. So this module has both hands-on and web-based items, and you will see the full exam and point values for each section at once. And this is great because that will allow you to strategize. So basically, I would focus on the sections that give you the highest amount of points. And then maybe if you're not sure on some lower scored items, then leave those to last if you still have time, or don't even complete those if necessary. One main reason why I hear candidates fail the CCIE lab exam is because of bad strategy, or not necessarily bad strategy, but not efficient enough or not optimized enough to pass the exam. But that's a topic for another video in the future. And this part is also interesting. So this module provides a setup that is very close to an actual production network environment and consists of both hands-on device access as well as web-based items. So this is really cool in my opinion. So they want you to work on a network that is close to what you would see in your job. I think that's great. Okay, so let's move forward or down the page and let's talk about the documentation briefly. So an important note about the documentation. So this section says Cisco documentation page is available, but the site may be down due to system upgrades or for other reasons. Right here. So basically, that means do not rely on the Cisco documentation page to pass the lab exam. I doubt you'll have much time to search the documentation, even if it's available. So practice the technologies well enough that you don't need the documentation. And then finally, let's talk about the exam scoring. And this can get a little bit tricky, so bear with me here. So there is a minimum score and a pass score. So to pass the exam, you need at least the minimum score on both modules, and the total score must reach the pass score. If you score less than the minimum score on either module, or your points do not meet the exam pass score, you will fail the exam. So this might be a little confusing, a little difficult to understand. So let's take a hypothetical example. I'll use my text document to go over the minimum score and the passing score. So let's say that the pass score for the exam is 100 points. So pass score is 100 points. Now let's also say that for each module you can earn 100 points. So let's say points per module, 100 points. And then let's set the minimum score for each module to 40 points. Minimum score per module is 40 points. Okay, so if you earn the minimum score in each module, which is 40 points, so you get 40 points plus 40 points, which is equal to 80 points, that is less than the passing score of 100 points, which means you will fail the exam. So let's say you get 40 points plus 40 points. So you got 80 points, and that is less than the passing score of 100 points. Oops. Okay, let's take this further. Say that you earn 30 points from the first module and 80 points from the second module with a total of 110 points, which is higher than the passing score. You will still fail the exam because you did not meet the minimum score of 40 points in the first module. So let's say 30 points from the first module, and then 80 points from the second module is equal to 110 points. This is greater than the passing score, but the result is still fail because 30 points is less than 40 points minimum score. Actually, let me write this fail here as well. All right. So you will only pass the exam if you earn a minimum of 40 points in each module plus another 20 points to meet the 100-point passing score. So basically you need 40 points plus 40 points and then another 20 points from either module. So then you would get 100 points. Actually, let me do 100 points or more. And then you will pass the exam. Yay! All right, so keep this in mind because this will eliminate the ability to create strategies like not caring about the design module and only focusing on configuration. This is not going to work. You need to know both. You need the minimum score and you need enough points to reach the passing score. Okay, let's go back to the document. So one last note, if you pass the exam, you will simply get a pass and no additional score details. And if you fail the exam, you get a score report breaking down which modules you passed or failed and your scoring percentages on a per section level. So let's say you didn't do so well on PGP in the configuration module. The score report will tell you that. And that way you have some insight into what areas you need to work on for the next attempt. All right, hopefully this video was helpful to you. Let me know what you think about the exam in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.